Sean Cole with DiscountJuicers.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you, and this is one I know many of you guys have been waiting for. I mean, we're duking it out today here on the Discount Juicers show on YouTube, and what we're going to do today is we're going to compare head-to-head, man, the Omega NC800 versus the Omega VSJ843. I like, actually, that I sell all the major brand juicers. I get to test all the major juicers for you guys to share with you guys what is truly the best juicer for you, because the juicer I like might be a different kind of juicer than what you like or what you need. Like, you know, I like a different kind of car than you guys. I mean, there's so many different manufacturers of cars. All the cars get you from point A to point B. Some of them get you there in style. Some of them allow you to haul things like a truck, and some of them allow you to haul your kids, you know, like the big old vans or whatever. And juicers are like that too. They all juice, but you know, beyond that, they all have their little intricacies, you know, their pros and their cons. And this is like, everybody always wants to like have the specific answer. John, what juicer do I buy? I don't know, watch my videos so you guys can see me use and juice different things with the different juicers to find out which juicer works the best. In addition, watch the specific videos that I make with each specific juicer to learn some of its pros, some of its cons. Many of the juicers also, you know, they don't explain everything in the instruction manual that I would like to have explained in the instruction manual. So even after the sale, or even before the sale, you could go and look at specific videos I make on how to use the machines properly. Because if you follow the instruction manual for many juicers, you know, you're not going to get the best results. And, you know, the manufacturer should upgrade and improve their instruction manuals to include some of the information that I share in my videos, because literally, I'm in the front lines, I'm in the ditches, you know, I'm using these juicers each and every day. I mean, today, I use the Omega VSJ843 to make my breakfast, right? And I used it the other day to make my lunch. And today I made a pineapple juice with oranges and some pomegranate Aerials. And man, that juice was delicious. You gotta try that. And I would never in my right mind, unless I didn't have another juicer in the house, use the Omega NC800 to juice pineapples, oranges, and pomegranate seeds. It just won't really work that well. So let's start off with actually how these machines work, because how they work influences on, you know, the kinds of things it can juice, as well as a pro and con in some cases. So both these machines are made by Omega. They're one of the longest standing companies in the juicing industry. They're a 100% American owned company. I like this a lot. And both these machines have nice 15-year long warranties. So either of these machines, you can't go wrong. These are the two top machines of their style from Omega at this time on the market. And they have 15-year warranties. You know, I want to really caution you guys against buying some cheap imported, you know, less expensive juicer. You know, I know that some of them you could get that cost less, but you guys know you get what you pay for. You know, if you want the Mercedes, you know, don't buy a Yugo or don't buy a Hyundai. Get the Mercedes. And luckily, you know, the juicers, you know, Omega is one of the brands that's literally the Mercedes of the juicers. These are their highest end models. And in my opinion, provided you fit your juicer properly, I think of myself as like those old-fashioned shoe salesmen, you know, back in the olden days when they actually had shoe salesmen that actually press your toe, measure your foot. You know, I want to be that kind of salesman guy for the juicers and explain to you all the different pros and cons so you can figure out which one's right for you. But anyways, 15-year warranties. You're going to be assured that your investment in your juicer, so that you can invest in your health and increase your health, will last for many years to come. Now, aside from the warranties, which are the same, these machines are both what's called single auger juicers. And Omega classifies this as a masticating juicer. Masticate means chew, and the original masticating juicer was a Champion. I would not classify these as masticating juicers. I would classify these as cold pressed juicers, because literally without any heat and with generating very little heat, much less than the Champion, as a matter of fact, these juicers literally, you know, crush and squeeze and press out the juice, you know, at a cold temperature. This is especially true if you're juicing cold produce, because the colder produce you have, the colder your juice is going to come out. And how these work are, they're both single augers, but they work differently. So let me go ahead and take these guys apart for you guys and show you how these work. So this is what's called a horizontal single auger juicer, because the auger is running horizontally. And that's this right here. And this is kind of like your old-fashioned meat grinder. What happens is this auger spins around, and as it spins around, it basically chunks off a piece of the produce you put in. It runs it down this auger, and it compresses it into this little cone here, and it literally presses and squeezes out the juice. So the way this works is there's two stages. The initial stage, you have the crush. On the initial crush, depending on what you're juicing, some juice comes out this first stage screen. The second stage is a pretty distinct stage, which is a grinding stage. So literally, after the initial crush, the produce is ground for a period of time into small pieces. And then finally, on the second stage, those small pieces that are ground down also contains juice. They're pressed through these little holes here, in which case the juice comes out the bottom and the pulp comes out the front of the machine. And I like this model, which is the latest Omega horizontal design, because it has a nice large feed chute that's significantly larger than the previous models, such as the Omega 8006, 8004, 8007, and 8008. And the other thing that makes this one different is this has an outlet adjusting knob here. It has different settings from 0 to 5. And you know, you want to adjust this based on what you're juicing. So if you're juicing like vegetables, you're always going to want to put this like on a 5. And if you're juicing fruits, you're going to want to put it on like a 1 or a 2. This basically keeps more back pressure and doesn't allow the pulp to come out until it's fully dry. So this is also a learning challenge that can be, because if you're trying to juice fruit and you have it on 5, it's going to back up and it's going to make a mess, and you're going to be calling me, John, the juice is a piece of junk, doesn't juice fruit. Well, hey, you might have to actually put it on a 1 or even take it off so that the fruit will juice well in here, because I mentioned earlier that, you know, the VSJ is the best juicer for fruit. So already, if you want to juice a lot of fruit, get the VSJ. Do yourself a favor, don't get the NC800. So anyways, that's how this guy works. This guy works at a low 80 RPMs. RPM stands for revolutions per minute, and that's how fast this spins. If you're a guy into cars, you know RPMs, because your engine runs at, you know, several thousand, up to 10,000 RPMs on motorcycles and some, you know, 4-cylinder cars. But this runs at a low and slow 80 RPMs. And then the other thing about these machines, a little bit different, is that the feed chute's smaller on the Omega NC800, but the cool thing is you do not have to pre-cut the produce going in, you know, such as celery and leafy greens. Some of the fibers get stuck in the VSJ. They won't get stuck in the Omega NC800. That being said, you do need to cut things so that they will actually fit in the feed chute. So this can be a challenge with, you know, when you're juicing fruits and apples and other things, you know, that you're just gonna have to cut down anyways. The other thing about the Omega NC800 is that every item you put in there, this machine is for the most part not auto-feeding. It'll auto-feed a few produce items depending on what you're putting in and how small they're cut. But for the most part, you're gonna have to sit there and push each and every item into the NC800, you know, to basically get the auger to accept it and start crushing it and squeezing out all the juice. And this is a pro and a con. The other thing about the NC800 is that it does more than just juice. It'll also make things like nut butters out of roasted peanuts, because the high oil content in roasted peanuts. It'll make nut flours out of, say, raw almonds, because there's not a lot of oil in there. Once you've got the nut flour, you can then add some oil, making it more like into a butter. And that's with the blank plate. Instead of having a juicing screen, they also include, when you purchase the machine, a blank plate that has no holes. It basically just crushes everything up. I've also used that attachment to make things like salsa. I've also used it to make things like frozen fruit sorbets. So this is an excellent way to, you know, better your diet. I mean, it's called NC800. The NC stands for Nutrition Center, because it does a lot more than just juice. It'll also grind up and mince garlic and coffee and so many other uses with the blank plate, you know, that the VSJ actually does not have. The final thing I want to really mention about the NC800 is that, take a look at this thing. I mean, it takes probably double the amount of counter space, or it has a larger footprint than the VSJ does. I mean, this thing is large. This is like their latest model, but for some reason, the motor body area has actually gotten bigger instead of shrink. I personally didn't like that too much, but that's just how it is. It kind of looks cool, kind of like a puppy dog. But yeah, that's pretty much it on the Omega NC800. Let's go ahead and move over to the Omega VSJ843. This one's, you know, called a vertical single auger. So guess what? The auger runs vertically instead of horizontally. We'll take this guy apart here. And here's the auger in this machine. It's much different. Let's go ahead and compare those guys for you side by side so you guys can see those. I mean, the auger is much different. You can basically see on the NC800 there's a lot more time where the produce is getting crushed down because the auger is longer. In addition, on the NC800, you know, there's a distinct grinding stage, whereas on the Omega VSJ, once the produce goes into the machine, it's immediately crushed and the juice that's crushed out is able to go through the holes. So this is a pro and a con. The other thing that's really cool about the VSJ is that there's this automatic wiping blade. This is kind of like the windshield wipers on your car. Basically, this blade wipes down the screen and keeps your screen clean so that you get the maximum amount of yield, and also it makes cleanup, you know, a tad bit easier. So yeah, this machine, instead of running at 80 RPMs, runs at a low and slow 43 RPMs, which is literally half the RPMs. And now you might be thinking, okay, John, you've said in your other videos that the lower the RPM, the better the nutrient quality. And I would say, yes, that's accurate, but for me, like going from 43 to 80 RPMs, not significant. Going from 80 RPMs to 10,000 RPMs or 80 RPMs to 3,600 RPMs, that's significant. So I wouldn't say the nutrition's better in this. You know, it's tough to say. You know, it depends more on actually, in the case of these slow juicers, what you're juicing actually. But yeah, so that's how this guy works, auger that spins around. And what happens on this guy is that there's a little flap here. There's no outlet control like in numbers 1 to 5. So in this case, this is actually easier to use because this little pulp flap that should be unplugged when cleaning and pushed in when juicing basically keeps back pressure on the pulp and does not allow it to come out until it's fully juiced. In addition, one of the features I like on this is that it actually has this spout cap that you could close so you don't get drips on your countertop after you're done juicing. In addition, you can do mixing in the bowl, which actually I do not recommend because it can actually lower your yields. Let's go ahead and assemble these guys. And basically on assembly, probably, and cleaning, let's talk about that for a minute. The NC800, much simpler to clean for this main reason right here. The hardest part to clean on any juicer basically is the juicing screen. And the amount of holes on the juicing screen dictates to you how difficult it is going to be to clean. I mean, a lot of the parts you could just basically blast hot water with a little scrub brush in your sink and it'll blast off all the vegetable and fruit residues. But the screen, even if you blast water on this, the residues are not going to come out. You need to use a special nylon bristle brush that has nice hard bristles, so think of it as an oversized toothbrush. It's like extra firm to scrub out this screen, and that takes the most amount of time to clean. And check it out, I want you guys to look at the screen area. So that's the total amount of screen space you'll have to clean. Much more screen area on the VSJ843. So in general, the cleaning of the NC800 takes me about 1.5 minutes, under 2 minutes. I'm pretty quick. And on the VSJ, it takes me under 3 minutes. So that's about double the amount of time to clean. If you're not as fast as me, you know, add a couple minutes to that, but basically know that the VSJ probably take you, you know, a little bit more than double the time. So it's going to slow you down a little bit. Assembly also is a lot easier on the NC800. And as I mentioned before about instructions and on using the juicer, the NC800 is more of like idiot-proof juicer for those of you guys that like idiot-proof things. If you got like a wife, a husband, or a girlfriend using the juicer right, you might want to get this because you turn this juicer on, you put the stuff in, and it juices. With the Omega VSJ, you got to be more concerned about cutting things up, putting it in, feeding it in the right order. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best results. So yeah, this is something else you might want to pay attention to. Now, the other thing is the Omega VSJ is not designed to do anything else than juice. So it will not make the nut butters, not make the frozen banana sorbets, and make the salsas and all this kind of stuff. So if that's what you want, you know, you're out of luck on the VSJ, so you might want to lean more towards the NC800 in this case. Let's go ahead and assemble this guy. One of the things I do like about the Omega VSJ is because it is the latest design vertical single auger juicer on the market. It's very easy to assemble. Many of the other single auger juicers have a little dot to line up. No dots on this. You just drop the screen in until it seats down all the way. Then you put the auger in. You drop the auger down into basically the holes in the wiping blade until it locks into place, and then you're ready to go. Now the other thing I like is that on the Omega VSJ, it's the only juicer that I'm aware of that basically is deleted like an extra gear on the bottom of the juicing bowl. Many other vertical auger juicers have this gear, which actually increases the noise and also is another thing that can be harder to clean and actually can also break on you. So I like that this machine has deleted that. And also the thing with this machine is that this is the quietest vertical auger juicer on the market that I've tested to date. It's super quiet. I mean, I can barely hear it myself when I'm running it. Let's go ahead and assemble the Omega NC800. Really super simple, super easy to assemble. So as you guys can see, you learned about the different machines. Oh, both these machines do not come and include a strainer, which I think Omega should be including. So you have to get a standard strainer sieve, to strain out the pulp in the juice. That being said, the amount of pulp generated in these juices will be dependent on what specifically you're juicing. Compared to other vertical juicers, the Omega VSJ makes very little pulp in the juice, although it still does make some. And of course, the Omega NC800 may make some pulp in the juice, primarily because the first stage screen are larger holes than the second stage. Now, the other thing I want to mention is if you're like thinking, John, I want to make almond milk, man. I want to make almond milk. Well, the Omega VSJ843 will make almond milk better than the NC800. The NC800 will do that, but it's not going to work so well because of that, the holes in the first stage of the screen. So keep that in mind. I mean, once again, all these juicers have their pros and cons, and I'm just kind of sharing them with you guys so you guys could weigh out what's more important to you. Do you want to be able to make frozen fruit sorbets or, nut milks? I don't know. I own both machines, so if I'm doing one thing, I could use this one. If I'm doing the other, I could do this, and that might be the best choice. So you guys could have the best of both worlds. Some other differences with these machines in general, based on my experience, which I'm going to back up in a minute when we're going to do our juice off, is that the Omega works the best. It's the best juicer, in my opinion, on the market at this time. That's easy to clean, easy to use, long warranty for juicing things like wheatgrass and sprouts. It also does fairly well at juicing hard vegetables. I mean, in my test with the older model vertical juicer by Omega, actually it beat the vertical Omega VRT400 in a yield test when juicing both carrots and cactus fruits, which actually ground up the cactus fruit seeds, which is rare to have on a juicer. So it actually put the nutrition from the seeds into the juice, which changed the flavor but increased the nutrition. So that's how well this thing works. It grinds up very well, makes the pulp, fairly dry, and this is one of the easiest juices to clean. So if that's your criteria, you might want to go for this. Now over to the VSJ, of course, it has its benefits too. I kind of prefer the VSJ myself more than the NC800 for a few facts. Number one, it tends to juice fruits better than the NC800. The NC800, if you're trying to juice fruits such as pineapple, it's going to back up, it's going to clog, it's not going to work well for you, and you're going to be cursing me out, and I don't want that to happen. So if you want to juice fruits, you want to get the VSJ843. I do have specific videos on how to juice pineapples in the Omega 843. Now on juicing something like carrots in the Omega VSJ, it does work well. It does make a little pulp in the juice compared to other vertical juicers, but the VSJ, because it has a different gearing, runs at a lower RPM, I have noticed it does have some challenges juicing carrots. You need to cut them into half or quarters and not just drop them in and let them auto feed. You're going to have to let them go in, let the juicer take off a chunk and then pull it out. And I do have a video showing how to specifically to juice carrots in the VSJ if that's what you want to do. One of the things I do like about the VSJ is that it juices fruits, quite well, like I said, and it's auto feeding. That in itself right there for me is huge. I really dislike having to put an item in the hopper there in the NC800 and push it in and sit there, waste my time pushing produce into the juicer. I got far too many other things to do, tend to my garden, talk to my girlfriend, hang out with my girlfriend, do something else in life other than pushing stuff in the juicer. And that's why I really like the VSJ myself personally, because I can literally chop things up, chop and drop and drop it in the juicer. The juicer auto feeds and the juice comes out. I could worry about just chopping, dropping, and it's working on its own, whereas on the NC800 I have to put something in there, push it in, and that can take quite a bit of time. So yeah, both of these machines have their pros and cons. Of course, you guys can see the footprint size. If the footprint size is important to you, you're going to want to get the VSJ. It takes far less counter space than the NC800. Although, these are many of the differences between these machines. Probably the main difference is the yield difference, and you're wondering, John, well, how much does this yield on? So now I've got some homegrown collard greens from my garden. These are off my beautiful collard trees that grow 365 days a year, produce bountiful amounts of leaves for me to juice, literally for free. I know that's one of the things, if you guys get into juicing, get mighty expensive, you know, buying greens every week to juice, because, you know, literally about 1 pound of greens turn into about, you know, 1 cup of juice. And, you know, a bunch of greens, depending on where you live, organic ones anyways, could cost, you know, $2, $3, even $4 in some places. But I wanted to let you guys know that you guys could easily grow a garden no matter where you live. And even if that means you're growing microgreens and sprouts and wheatgrass inside your home, if you live in an apartment in New York City. And if you're interested in learning how to grow your own food, you're going to want to check out my other YouTube channel, growingyourgreens.com. And, you know, I teach you guys how you can grow your own food easily there, so you could actually start juicing it and getting the health benefits out of some of the best food in the world, homegrown stuff. Anyways, now that we got the greens picked, go ahead and do a weigh-in. So as you guys can see, over on the Omega NC800 side, we have the beautiful collard greens, and it weighs in at approximately 10 ounces. All right, now over to the Omega VSJ843 side, we once again have some beautiful collard greens, and once again weighs in at exactly 10 ounces. All right, so we got a fair fight. Let's go ahead and get juicing. So we're gonna go ahead and juice in the Omega NC800 first. Let's go ahead and move this to the side here. Turn this juicer on, running at a low and slow 80 RPMs. I really like the low RPM juicers. They're much quieter than the high speed machines. In addition, the low speed machines, you know, are much more gentle extraction process on your juices and produce a higher level of nutrients in the juice that will store and last much longer, in my opinion. Okay, turn this baby on. The cool thing is about the Omega NC800 is that we can literally take each leafy green and roll it up and just drop it in the machine. And this juicer is just going to take it and, you know, really pretty much almost auto feed it in. You can see the stem is getting stuck there a little bit. And we're just going to go ahead and feed one leaf after the other and let the machine literally tear it up. No cutting or prepping of the produce is required. The other thing I want to mention to you guys, if you guys will need to use the pusher, and I do not recommend sticking anything into the juicer aside from the pusher. Don't stick your fingers in there, your kid's fingers, your dog's paws, you know, knives, forks, spoons. I've had multiple customers and multiple ex-girlfriends stick, you know, utensils into the machine, which then damages the utensil and, more importantly, damages their machine. And when you damage your machine because of your own fault, guess what? It's not covered under warranty. So you're going to have to buy like a brand new auger, and those augers can get actually quite expensive. So yeah, you're going to want to pay attention and always use your juicer properly. Make sure you follow all the instructions located in the instruction manual. Alright, so as you guys can see, this is immediately juicing on up. We got this set to 5, most back pressure to create the most amount of juice. And I want to let you guys know that, you know, besides just the leafy greens we're juicing and all the juice in the leafy greens, right? A big part of the juice that's coming out of the juicer right now is actually in the stem. The stem's full of fibers. I mean, we could pull some of these fibers off for you guys. I mean, these are just the fiber strings in there. And besides the fibers, there's, you know, the cell walls that are full of the nutrients or water in there. And this juicer extracting all the nutrients from there. I mean, if you take a look at this pulp here, I mean, we got this dry pulp, and you can see the fibers literally just coming out of the machine. They're literally wrung dry. So, I mean, that's why I say the Omega NC800, you know, probably the best juicer on the market that I've tested for sprouts and leafy greens and, you know, things like wheatgrass, you know, for a multi-purpose juicer at this time. Let's go ahead and continue to juice our collard greens in the Omega NC800. Now I want to let you guys know, I mean, I know many of you guys already are like really want to be juicing leafy greens, and some of you guys might not even like know the benefits of leafy greens, right? So the collard greens are in the brassica family. This is also the same family as broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage, bok choy. And there's been studies that show, you know, the brassica greens, the cruciferous vegetables, have basically, you know, really good antioxidants and nutrients in there that can help fight disease You know, there's been some studies that show it can help with things like cancer and enhance your immune system. And you know, the leafy greens, one of the most deficient items in the American diet today. If you get a juicer and do nothing else than just juice some greens, and you don't even have to juice this many because this is a lot of greens and I'm used to them. You know, in my opinion, you're going to be a lot healthier because of it. I mean, the nutrient that you need the most in your diet, you know, and in your life is the nutrient you're not getting. And I know most Americans do not eat enough leafy greens in their diet. My goal every day is to eat 2 pounds of leafy greens, and yes, that's actually quite a bit. But I mean, right here I'm juicing 10 ounces plus 10 ounces, and I'm going to be drinking all this stuff. That's 20 ounces of leafy green juice. That's almost 1.5 pounds right there. Alright, so you guys can see I'm pushing in the greens, and you know, you can see there's a few leaves and stuff stuck that's not getting fed into the juicer that we're not able to push with our pusher. And I know you guys might be tempted. I could stick a fork or a knife down there, John, and push it in. Well, don't do it. Try to use another piece of the produce, you know, roll it up, try to, like, you know, finagle that thing in there. Because if you put something else in there, you know, it's gonna break. You're gonna break something. It's not good. Alright, so let's see if we could get that guy sucked in. Alright, we got it all in, thank God. This is gonna be more of a fair test because there's nothing sitting left in the auger. Alright, let's go ahead and put this last leaf in. We're gonna go ahead and put the stem end down just a little bit at a time. Let it kind of suck in there, and hopefully it's gonna draw that whole thing in so it all gets juiced. Alright, as you guys can see, it got sucked in. We're getting out that last bit of juice in the Omega NC800. The pulp is coming out this end. I mean, this juicer is simply amazing. This is some of the driest pulp I've seen ever on any machine. I mean, I'm wringing it out, and there's like, my hand's moist, but there's no juice coming out of it. This is very efficient. Alright, so once you're done juicing in the Omega NC800, you don't want to immediately turn the machine off. You know, if there's still juice dripping out, you're going to want to let it run for 30 seconds more to let the juicer extract all the juice out. Once you let it run for a little bit, we're going to go ahead and turn it off. And one of the things I like to do sometimes is actually tip it backwards, and you guys can see, right? We're draining it of some juice that's stuck in the screen area. So this is going to increase our yield a little bit. We're going to go ahead and stop that. We're going to go ahead and move this aside since we don't need it anymore. And now we're going to go ahead and move this guy over, and we're going to juice our 10 ounces of leafy greens in the Omega VSJ843. Now, unlike the NC800, we can't just take the leafy greens and drop them in the machine. You know, I would never do that. While you could do that, you're going to have some problems because all these fibrous strings in here, much like the celery strings that get stuck in your teeth, will basically plug up the ejection port, and then this machine will stop working properly. It won't be able to feed out the pulp. It's going to back up on the inside of the machine, and basically you're going to get a lot of pulp in the juice, and your yield is going to be greatly diminished. So this is not an inherent challenge or problem with the Omega VSJ. It's with all vertical slow juicers, no matter what brand you get. You know, I do encourage and recommend you guys chop up all your leafy greens before putting it in any vertical juicer. I do not recommend cutting them up for the NC800 because actually that might not be as good because it really thrives on, you know, crushing everything up and squeezing out the juice at the same time. So to expedite the process of cutting our greens, what I like to do is I like to stack my leafy greens like I'm stacking a deck of cards. So I'm stacking all the leafy greens up, one leaf on top of the other, and it helps if the leaves are all flat, as these mostly are. And we're just going to stack all these guys up. Alright, so we got a big stack of collard greens right here. Once we got them all stacked, one of the things I like to do is try to roll them up. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And once we got it into a nice fat roll, then we're going to take the knife, and then I just like to cut them. So I like to cut them into 1/8 inch pieces, or as close as you could get to that as possible. We're going to start with the stalk end first, so we'll just cut them up into little small pieces. This does not take actually that long, and be mindful of your fingers when cutting this kind of precision work. And if you're noticing, John, how come you're using a white knife, man? Is that plastic? Well, no, I don't like to use the plastic knives. This is actually sharper than a stainless steel knife. This is a ceramic knife, so I like to use the ceramic knives in my kitchen to cut and prepare my produce and oxidize the food less. Also, they remain sharper for longer, and I'm not a knife sharpener guru dude that sharpens my knives, so they would tend to be dull. But with the ceramic knives, you literally, one of the benefits is that you do not have to sharpen them nearly as much as the steel knives because they keep their edge much longer. That being said, yes, they are a bit fragile. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish cutting these all up. This is also a really good technique to use to cut, your leafy greens into a salad. This is called a chiffonade. So basically makes nice long small strips out of them into smaller bite-sized pieces, which we need to do for us as well as the Omega VSJ843. Alright, so once we got them cut that direction, then I like to maybe come back and cut across them this way is to make a little bit smaller pieces for the VSJ to deal with. Alright, that looks like we've cut them up enough. Now we're going to go ahead and turn the VSJ on, and we're just going to go ahead and simply take handfuls of the leafy greens and drop them in. This is what I like about the Omega VSJ literally. As you guys can see, I just dropped in the produce, and it's literally working and auto feeding. If you guys notice the noise level, the VSJ is much more quiet than the NC800, but not by much. These are still some very quiet juicers, and much more quiet than those high-speed machines that have been described to me before as an airplane taking off in your kitchen. That being said, those style machines, the high-speed machines, basically do leafy greens the worst out of any juicer. These machines are light years ahead of the high-speed machines when juicing the leafy greens. It's going to make a much higher yield. That being said, the slower machines, if you're used to a high-speed machine, if you're getting a slower machine, be prepared. They all make more pulp in the juice. So if you don't like pulp in the juice because that's what you're used to with the high-speed machines, which tend to make little pulp in the juice, you're going to want to buy a strainer, especially with these two Omega juicers that do not include a strainer, which I think they should. Alright, so as you guys can see, this is juicing quite well. The pulp is coming out. The machine's doing an incredible job literally grinding up all the fibers and getting out all the pulp. And this is going to be definitely really interesting to see which juicer reigns supreme in this juice off. Alright, so I'm continuing to feed my leafy greens into the VSJ. It's also very important when juicing in either of these machines, take your time, don't just keep cramming stuff in the VSJ as fast as you possibly can to be done with juicing as fast as you can. Because, overloading your juicer is not a good idea. When you overload it, it's got too much produce in there. It can't work on it effectively. It may not get as high of a yield. It also may back up or clog on you. So I'm putting the produce in a slow and leisurely pace. Now, in general, I don't necessarily recommend juicing straight greens. Straight green juices are very harsh on the palate, especially if you're not used to them. And so in most cases, you would not make a straight green juice. You would make a green juice with other things. So for example, you juice 3/4 of the glass in carrot juice and 1/4 of the glass in the leafy greens. And that's a fairly good mixture. If you didn't want to do carrots because you believe they're too high in sugar, which I believe, carrots, while they do contain some sugar, have plenty of other phytochemicals and phytonutrients that are quite beneficial for us. You could do like celery, cucumbers, 3/4 of your glass, and then do, a quarter of your glass with the leafy greens. You could also add some apples in there too to make it a little bit sweeter if the leafy greens are too harsh for you. That being said, if you have never juiced leafy greens before, I always recommend you guys start small and then increment. So start off by juicing all carrots and like 2 leaves of, kale or Swiss chard or whatever, collard greens. And you're going to drink it. Oh yeah, I can handle that because you're going to taste mostly carrot. Tastes good. And, and then slowly add leaves, add 3 leaves, 4 leaves until you're like, oh man, that starts to taste kind of gross, right? Then back off a little bit and just keep it at the point where you just kind of oh yeah, okay, I can handle carrots with 4 leaves. And keep that up for a month. And then finally, after a month of doing that, your taste buds have gotten adapted to juicing that much leafy greenage. And then increase it by 1 leaf. So then go from 4 leaves to 5 leaves. And yes, that's just 1 extra leaf. But over time, if you continue this process and keep adding more greens, one day you'll be able to juice greens straight like I am today. Alright, so we're just feeding the rest in. The Omega VSJ has done an amazing job basically auto feeding in and juicing all the leafy greens. As you guys can see, the pulp is still slowly coming out. Now it's even more important to leave the VSJ on after putting that last produce in than even the Omega NC800, because it runs at, you know, half the RPMs, 43 RPMs, and the main thing you're looking for is when the pulp stops coming out, then the machine has stopped juicing. So I can see ever so slowly the machine and the pulp is still coming out very slowly, so we're going to leave this machine to run just a little bit longer. And I'm going to go ahead and get some measuring glasses and our strainer to, you know, find out which juicer made more pulp, and of course, most importantly, which juicer made the most yield. Alright, I think this machine has stopped running. Let's go ahead and turn this guy off. And finally, we're going to go ahead and tip this machine up to see if we get any more juice out of it. Alright, looks like there's no juice coming out, so that's definitely a good thing. We're going to go ahead and close up that stopper. Now the thing I'm going to do next, oh, this guy's still even dripping juice out of it ever so slowly. We're going to go ahead and remove the juice pitcher there. We got all the little juice, and on the juice you're going to see some foam. Now the foam would be minimized if you juice, like, say, carrots or celery or cucumbers in with the greens and alternated. So did some leafy greens, some celery, some leafy greens, some cucumbers. All juicers will create some level of foam, so I want you guys to be aware of that. We're going to go now take our funnel here, put the funnel over the cup, take identical strainers on both sides. We're going to go ahead and pour our juice through the strainer and pour this around the strainer to get all the delicious juice strained through without any of that extra pulp that may be appearing in the juice. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and tap this guy down a bit. Make sure we get all that juice out. I guess there's a little bit of residual left in there, but we'll just have to deal with it. And we're going to go ahead and shake this strainer out a little bit. Looks like it's doing pretty good. Not a whole lot of pulp in there. Going to go ahead and set this, still got a few drips in there. We're going to set this guy down right here. Shake our strainer down a little bit, get all the juice off of it. Alright, go over to the Omega VSJ side. Once again, brand new identical strainer. Set in our pitcher there. Go ahead and take our pitcher of VSJ collard green juice and pour this guy in there. Alright, trying to get an even distribution of the juice through the strainer. This will be very interesting to see which juicer is better. Alright, every last bit. And once again, shake this strainer down. Alright, looks like we got most of that stuff out of there. Put the strainer down. I want to show you guys the strainers, what was left in each one. This is the Omega NC800, and this is the Omega VSJ. As you guys could notice, basically the VSJ, they probably made about equal amounts of pulp. Maybe the NC800 made a little bit more pulp. But the thing that the VSJ did create is a lot, and I want to say a lot more foam. Like minimally, like 3 times the amount of foam that the NC800 did. And that's just the way this machine operates. All the vertical juicers, when juicing leafy greens, there's more basically space in between the apparatus and the screen, and it tends to create more foam. On leafy greens, specifically on fruits, this does not necessarily happen. So if we tap that down, we got most of the juice into the glass. And now if you look at this, just by looking at it, you know, side by side, you're like, oh John, the Omega VSJ blew away the NC800 because it made a lot more. But actually, let's go ahead and do a close-up for you guys on the exact juice each one made. Alright, so as you guys can see, there's the close-ups on each of the glasses. Now, you guys could definitely see the amount of foam when I'm more on a close-up shot. On the Omega NC800, basically, the juice is actually at the 3-ounce mark, and the foam takes it a little bit past 3.5 ounces of juice. Now, yes, the foam will basically all the bubbles will bubble off it and it will add to the juice content because the foam is juice plus air. And over on the VSJ side, we're seeing actually that the juice mark pretty much is at 3.5 ounces and the rest pretty much is foam. And the other thing that I want to note that you guys can't really see is the particulate in the juice itself. So I may take an additional strainer to strain out, you know, a finer pulp. Although we did strain the pulp, the sieve mesh on these strainers are actually fairly large in my opinion, and it looks like to me that the VSJ, you know, did make a lot of more fine particle sizes of pulp in the juice. You guys could see that if I go very close up, you could see like little specks in the juice. And on the NC800, if you guys look closely, I mean, it's pretty much just like plain juice. There's not a lot of specks. So that specks might be making up for some of the yield difference. Alright, so the juice has been settling a bit, and I want to go ahead and further strain it down with a finer sieve to see if my assumption is actually accurate. We got 2 finer mesh sieves. We're going to take the juice once again from the NC800, pour it through this fine mesh sieve here. And yes, we're definitely getting some pulp left over in this sieve, even though it made a fairly pulp-free juice in the Omega NC800. And it's going to be interesting to see on the VSJ what it does. Looks like we even got a little bit more juice out of the NC800 in the catch cup. Just a few more drops. Now we're going to go ahead and filter out the VSJ juice. I'm expecting to see a significant more amount of pulp. It's having a much more challenging time getting through the sieve there. And let's see if there's any more juice over in this collection jug as well. Alright, we're going to go ahead and let these guys drain out for just a little bit. See what we got. Alright, so after adjusting for all the pulp, I could definitely say that the Omega NC800 made less fine particulate pulp than the Omega VSJ easily. Probably by like half as much pulp. So, you know, even though we strained it in a larger sieve, I went down to a smaller, finer sieve, and we filtered out, you know, twice as much pulp in the Omega VSJ, so that does account for some of the yield increase. In addition, the VSJ juice is still far more frothy or have more foam in it. You know, that this strainer additionally helped to strain out more foam, but there's still some foam, you know, in the juice there. But despite, you know, the second straining, the VSJ actually still made a little bit more juice. So let's go ahead and pour it back into our measuring cups to see how much it made. We've strained out all the extra pulp. Now, let's do a close-up. Alright, so as you guys can see, the Omega NC800 now, after accounting for the fine particle pulp in the juice, made over 2.5 ounces of juice. And over on the VSJ, wow, it made over 3 ounces of juice total. So this is very telling. Wow, so that was actually quite unexpected. I didn't think the VSJ actually was going to be superior to the NC800 in juicing the leafy greens. Because, man, I mean, in general, when we feel these pulps, wow. Yeah, I mean, the VSJ pulp does feel a tad bit drier. I mean, it's incredible what Omega has done to take the VSJ to be literally the most efficient vertical slow juicer on the planet. Now, yes, it does leave, you know, double the amount of pulp than the Omega NC800. And, you know, it does create more foam, which means more oxidation to your juice. But in the end, it does juice more. You know, this just goes to show that, you know, each juicer is going to perform a little bit different depending on the exact produce you're putting in. Like if we would have juiced like carrots with the greens, you know, the winner may have been a little bit different. So yeah, in this juice off, we're going to have to declare the winner. The Omega VSJ843 made over a half ounce more of juice than the NC800. I guess last thing, we're going to go ahead and try that juice. Whoa. You guys don't want to be drinking this stuff straight. nice and strong. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode learning the differences between the Omega VSJ843 and the Omega NC800. In the end, I want to encourage you guys to purchase the juicer that's going to serve you best. You know, if you like the auto feeding like I do, if you want a higher yield and don't mind the extra foam or the pulp, then go with the VSJ. Beware that the VSJ also is better at juicing fruits, but it will stall out on some carrots, so be sure to check my past videos on that. If you want to be able to do the multi-function uses that the Omega NC800 offers, such as making nut butters, frozen fruit sorbets, and making salsas, you know, grinding up your coffee beans, and mincing garlic, then you're going to want to go with the NC800. It's a very versatile machine because it allows you to do more than just juice. It's also really, you know, good for the leafy greens as well as the vegetables, and it's the only way I would be juicing sprouts and wheatgrass. If you do juice sprouts and wheatgrass in the VSJ, it will likely get stuck in the ejection port unless you cut them up small like I did, you know, with the collard greens. So yeah, once again, every juicer has their pros and cons. No matter which of these Omega juicers you go with, I'm sure you've got some of the best juicers in the world. So once again, this is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. If you want to purchase one of these juicers, be sure to visit our website, DiscountJuicers.com, to support me and the work that I do to demonstrate these juicers and literally educate you guys about these juicers, because no other company goes into the great detail that I do to make all these videos, you know, over 300 videos now demonstrating and describing all the different juicers in detail. Also be sure to visit DiscountJuicers.com/YouTube for special promotional offers for our YouTube visitors. Alright, this is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. We're here in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm traveling. I'm here because of the Natural Products Expo East. This is the largest trade show for the health food industry. And in my opinion, there's no other better